So good morning or good night, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to another video of the Chill Dude on a Couch. I'm your host, Hector, and today I'm joined by Mike G. Mike G is here because he's a super Avenged Sevenfold fan, and we're gonna do something different. You know, a lot of people do like Avenged Sevenfold rankings where they rank the albums, but we're gonna do an Avenged Sevenfold evolution of sound discussion. So what we're gonna do is like we're gonna talk about Avenged Sevenfold, like different albums from beginning to the last one, and we're gonna discuss like favorite tracks and see how they evolve in sound, or if there's something that has always been truly unique to their sound. So that's what we're gonna do today. So first of all, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Hector.
Oh,
Excited
thanks for
to
being.
talk about some Avenged Sevenfold.
Yes, yeah, yes. You're more of a fan than I am, but obviously, I'm like, yeah, we can discuss. You know, Avenged Sevenfold obviously put out "Life Is But a Dream" this year, which I already reviewed on the channel. But they've been around now since the beginning of the 2000s. I just can't believe that they've been around that well, that that long. So let's start with since you're my guest, Mike. Let's start with you, and let's start with their first album.
Yeah, we can go all the way back and talk to about Sounding the Seventh Trumpet. I mean, as you said, early 2000s, going back a ways, 2001 was the first album. What's interesting is, I mean, they were obviously quite young, late teens at that time. I think the big thing with them is at that point, Sinister Gates, current lead guitarist, was not a part of the band yet. That was the only album he was not on. Um, pretty much kind of that California hardcore thrash theme was the sound on that album. A lot of screaming, more of the screamo type hardcore music. So a little bit different than current day. So they're kind of, I think, just finding their sound at that point.
Yeah, and it came out in 2002, and I actually hadn't listened to the. I got into them with "Waking the Fallen,"
Mm.
but we'll go into that one in a few. But yeah, I was actually preparing for this video. I went to listening to all their albums, and I was listening to to the first album, but I was impressed because there's a song. I can't remember now which one, if it's "Darkness Surrounding" or "The Art of Subconscious Illusion." And there's parts where you get some progressive elements, and there was a part, there's a song that has some great like drumming, like you could tell, like even though there's a lot of screamo and hardcore influence, you could tell that they always enjoyed their prog. uh to me, I hadn't listened to an album that well. It's a good album, but you know what, I don't like M Shadow's vocals when it's too much screamo.
Agreed. I think there's also too Warmness of the Soul. If you listen to that track as well too, there's a little bit of singing on there. So it's kind of one of those things where there were so many bands lumped together in that same time frame where it was screamo was the thing, and it's just yelling, those kind of vocals. But you could tell, okay, with the drumming, with the singing, there's some talent there. You could tell this band had potential at that point.
Yeah, because at that time you had your Atreus, you had like all those bands that were like lumped in the same thing.
Hmm.
So yeah, when I listen to this album, I see it's a solid debut, but there's parts where the screamo that they lost me a little bit, uh, because I don't know, it's on the screen like I almost couldn't understand what they were singing, and it,
Yeah.
it didn't do well for the music. So that's it takes it a little bit down for me on that respect. Maybe there's some people that are like, "Are you crazy? That's the best Seven Sevenfold." But no, not for me. What do you think about that being like a super fan?
Yeah, I'm right there with you too. I mean, it was it was an okay debut, I feel like. It was a young band at the time, but definitely not their best effort.
And I didn't know Sinister Gates wasn't on that album. So I'm guessing he joined for 2003's Waking the Fallen, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, I was really excited to revisit that album. Actually, that's the first time that I listened to Avenged Sevenfold because I was dating this girl, and she's like, "Oh, you gotta listen to this band, Avenged Sevenfold. They're mixing like some metalcore, but they have like some classic metal influences, like the Iron Maiden, the Guns N' Roses." I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. So, what do you think about that sophomore release with Waking the Fallen?
I gotta say, Wake and the Fallen is definitely one I'm very high on. It's up there in my Avenged Sevenfold category here as well. I mean, you got Chapter 4, which is kind of a hard-hitting song, but has some good melodies mixed in there. I feel like they have I Won't See You Tonight, the back-to-back part one and part two is just it's
Amazing
immense.
song. Yeah, not only that, I
Yes. And
was
then
reading the lyrics of that song. It's a very mature
it's
song
deep.
for it's
It
very
is,
deep.
yeah, for that young too. I mean, tackling the issues of suicide and the fallout between loved ones and people that care about you and what happens afterwards. It was quite emotional, quite a song. That and I think still my favorite track too, with just some of the riffs on it was Unholy Confessions. Can't touch that
Yeah,
one in that
that
album.
that track was a single because it had to be. It has some great riffing by Sinister Gates on it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just an amazing song. And when I listen to that, the first album in that album, it's leaps and bounds of the just the level of production from the first one to that one. It's just I'm like, wow, they really did progress a lot of a band just with one album. So yeah, I was really excited to revisit Waking the Fallen, and I think
Yeah.
it's 20 years. It's gonna be 20 years. This album this year, so it still sounds fresh. I like those same songs that you mentioned. You know, I Won't See You Tonight, especially part one. It's like an 8-minute epic song.
Hmm.
Uh, it's got some great solos on it, and there's like some metalcore progressive elements and great lyrics. And M Shadows on this album definitely sings more than on the first one.
Very true.
So that evolution was great. And now we're going to the album that made them household names, and an album that was one of my favorite albums from 2005, and that of course is City of Evil. I didn't
Oh
have to
yes.
listen to that one that much again because I own that one on vinyl, and I've listened to that album for years. So yeah, let's discuss the sound of that one.
Oof. Where do you begin with that one? I mean, so as we talked about, so many singles on that one too that were just fantastic hits. So many solos mixed in on that one. It's got a little bit of everything on there. I mean, you've got, of course, this title itself, City of Evil. You've got Beast and the Harlot. It is, yeah, it's something else.
And I think on that album, something that you can tell in the evolution is like the songwriting. There's a lot of good songwriting on that album, and it's very songwriting riff oriented. Like you could tell that that album for me had a lot of like they showed a lot of their Guns N' Roses like appreciation, like Think Appetite for Destruction. You
Mm.
got songs like Seize the Day, where you have that amazing solo. Then you got your more like harder edge songs like Beast and the Harlot. That's a great opening track. And something that I like about M Shadows on the vocal styles on this album is like his rapid delivery. I think on this one, it was kind of it kind of like rhymed. Uh, what do you think about like how he changed or he evolved as a singer on this one?
Yeah, there's a lot of different elements on that album too. I mean, yes, there's crushing guitar solos is kind of one of the themes of the album too. But yes, there's a lot of vocal evolution as you mentioned as well too. I mean, Seize the Day, a great written track, and there's a couple other ones that kind of sneak under the radar. Sidewinder, I thought was a little interesting tune too. That
Yeah.
just the way the melody goes with that and the lyrics. And they've got a couple other ones too. I mean, MIA, I feel like is a underrated gem on there as well too. I know
Yeah.
that's always a favorite that they play live when they do that. Again, great written song, a lengthier song, but a lot of good, musician work in there.
Yeah, because a lot of people would say, "Oh, Bad Country" was the single, but it was it was so played that it's still a great song, but I don't think it's the best
Oh yeah,
song on that album. You know, it has some great, I think, Sidewinder, MIA, which finishes the album strong. And yeah, this is an album that definitely you could. The soloing on this album was like the most amazing thing about the album. And I like there's like some punk energy to it, but you can tell that they started experimenting because this was their albums, they kept getting longer. Like this is an album that's 1 hour and 12 minutes. That's a lengthy length for an album. So they started like delving more. So now let's go to their fourth album, which was the White Album, just titled Avenged Sevenfold in
Self-titled. Yep.
2007. Yeah, the self-titled. That's the interesting one. Uh, and I was glad that I got to revisit it. What do you think about that one?
This one is an interesting one because this is where they really get kind of experimental in ways too. I mean, they have the classic Avenged Sevenfold song, critical acclaim. It's got, crunching guitars. It's got like in-your-face lyrics too. But they have some other melodies. They have a little auto tune mixed in some of the songs. And then, I mean, maybe one of my favorite all-time tracks is on that album, A Little Piece of Heaven, which is just completely off the rails. It's like a Tim Burton, ride that you're going through musically. It's just something else.
Yeah, I think on this album, the band wasn't afraid to experiment and like do something different. And that's very prog of them. You can tell that they have that prog tendencies. But they have Almost Easy, which is a classic sounding metal
Oh, yeah.
track. And I love M Shadow's vocals, like "Come Back to Me, It's Almost Easy." It was a great single, but I think on this album, revisiting it, you get songs also like Gunslinger, which has that saloon type of, like, you think like you're in the Wild West. But yeah, A Little Piece
Mhm.
of Heaven it's a long track also. It's got piano, it was very out there, and you can tell in this album that they were taking more risks.
Absolutely. I love the Rev's vocals on that too. He that's kind of one of the first times he's actually come in with vocals, and he does some of the backing vocals in A Little Piece of Heaven, which I really appreciate. And they've got, I think, another one that's interesting on there too, as far as the experimental aspect, is Unbound, the Wild Ride too. There's a little bit of auto tune, kind of a little different sound that they put out before on that one. So again, to that
Yeah.
point, this is really kind of their first experimental type album where they've gone away from kind of their signature sound. I think one of my other ones I like on that one too that doesn't get talked about a lot is Scream as well too, which
That's a great
it's
track.
it is, yeah, it's really a great track too, and it's almost like a sensual theme to it, just for them too. Just the beat, just kind of like that constant rhythm they have in it too, and just the kind of the vampiric tones. It's it's definitely under the radar.
Yeah, I remember when that album came out, I was a little bit apprehensive, maybe because I'm like but now that I listen to it more now, I like prog more now than back then when I was like 30. I appreciate it more now. So now go revisiting to that album, I'm like, it's a brilliant record, some great stuff on it. So uh now we're going obviously to 2010s, and obviously that's when they lost the rep who died, and huge blow to the band. But the band, I think, truly stepped up with the plate with 2010's Nightmare, which you have it on vinyl.
I do. I proudly have that one on a vinyl here.
Is that your favorite that you got it
Yeah,
on vinyl?
it didn't happen to be. I mean, I really enjoyed it, and just kind of at that time was just buying a decent amount of vinyl. It just, the 2010 timeframe was just kind of loading up, and Natural, my favorite band. I'm like, I've got to pick that one up.
Yeah. That album is really interesting, obviously, because that's when they had Mike Portnoy did the drums on that one, on the when they did that album. Obviously, Mike Portnoy,
Right.
a great fucking drummer that came from Dream
Yeah, Dream
Theater.
Theater. I mean, yeah, I mean, they've got Dream Theater. Some of their songs too. Just again, when we talk about these epically long songs too, I mean, Dream Theater's right there, and just drum solos. Yeah, Mike Portnoy was a great fill-in for them.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think that in the long run it made sense for them to have him, but I think on this album the drumming is, it's great, and there's a lot of they're paying homage to the Rev, who also
Hmm.
wrote a lot of the songs for them. So, what tracks for you stand out revisiting this album?
think my favorites on that one definitely are, of course, the title track, Nightmare too. I mean, you get the intro too. Just, I mean, I saw them, I think, 2 or 3 times during that tour when Nightmare came out, and just when they're opening up the show with that, just the slow doon, 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 and then the guitars kick in. Just great song. There's a lot of solos, a lot of great lyrics in that one. Um, and I think my other probably favorite was Buried Alive off of that album as well too.
That's
I
a
just
great
like the
song.
yeah,
It's very uplifting. Now, this is now your life.
your life
Die, buried,
buried
alive.
alive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know that
it's a great song.
they played Puerto Rico on that tour, and they did but I don't think the drummer wasn't Mike Portnoy. They had someone else filling in for drums. I don't know who, but it
Okay.
wasn't Mike Portnoy. And there was there was a part of the show where they brought someone from they asked like, is there someone who plays drums? And there's this kid that plays drum, and he got to play a full song with them. I don't remember which song it was, but it was fucking amazing. And I'm telling you, I like them, but when I saw them live, I got more respect for them because they're a great live band. I was
I'm
very blown away of how good they are live.
sure this wasn't a plant. This kid coming in and drumming with a band like Avenged Sevenfold.
Yeah, I'm sure that they have to be known. Like it had to they because I'm like, yeah, like, oh yeah, just come and play a song with us. Like
I mean,
but yeah,
if I'm out there and I'm volunteering and I go out there too, I might be like, okay, I have no clue what I'm doing here, and just,
no,
banging away
I
and look
can't
like,
play shit, so I would be like, but yeah,
yep.
I think those songs that you mentioned, I like Buried Alive is just an amazing track, and I like how it builds. Danger
Hmm.
Line, that's another one that I really enjoyed a lot. But it has So Far Away, but it has like pissed off songs like God Hates Us. When I'm
Hmm.
like, I forgot about that song. Uh, that one actually, there's a part where there's like a chorus where it gets very pissed off that I'm like, it sounds a little bit like Slayer for a few minutes in
Yeah.
one of the parts. So yeah, it's a great album, and I like the album Closer Save Me too.
Yeah. It's a super long track, but yeah, it's definitely a heavy one. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of great tracks on Nightmare too that go under the radar. I think the other one too is of course Fiction too, which is cool story behind that too. That the Rev was laying down vocals right around the time he passed away, and they ended up taking those vocals, and that's what got mixed into Fiction. So it's Shadows and Rev's vocals. So I mean, it's this super touching track, and I think it's a great song, and it fits great on that album given all the what
Yeah.
happened with the Rev.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very important album for them because it's like Avenged Sevenfold 2.0, like they're moving from grief. And now that I listen to this album, I think I would have it really up there as one of my favorites from them. I think it's a really great album that unfortunately was followed up with what is no doubt their worst release. Hail to the King from 2013. Let's dive into Hail to the King. What were your first thoughts when
Do
you
do we
listened?
need to?
Yes, we need to.
So I feel like number one, we have to point out too that there's a different drummer on that one too. They had Aaron Elijah was the drummer on that one too. So as we talked about, Mike Portnoy on the last album in Nightmare had switched there with Aaron Elijah. I feel like that one was more of kind of a tribute to Megadeth, Metallica, Guns N'
That
Roses, just
album,
kind of them.
if you listen to Shepherd of Fire and Sad But True at the same time, it's the same fucking song almost. I'm like, I am your God. I'm like, Sad But True. It sounds so much like Black Album to the numbers that it's offensive. And
eh,
from
This Means
going through
War
an
is another
album,
one that sounds like a Metallica.
yeah, from going through an album like Nightmare that's so out there, so progressive, so many elements, to an album that was so, like the kids would say today, basic.
Mm.
It was really like you could really feel like maybe I think they did it because they didn't it's like a fun album, but tracks I like for example, I love Hail to the King. I think it's a fun
Some
track,
good
and
riffs in that.
good riffs to that. And every time that I enter the room, that's the song that I think in my mind that plays. Like when I enter a room, I'm like, "Hail to the King!" But but yeah, like when I was releasing it, like this means war. It's like so. It's very generic sounding riffing. Except Hail to. I think the only song of that album that I really love releasing it is Hail to the King. Honestly, and it's
That's about
even.
it.
But besides that, I think it's their weakest album. Uh, and after that, they did a complete 180.
Did they ever?
Yeah, and I love it that it was 2016, and they didn't even they just dropped that album like without any like fuss. I'm like, I just woke up one day, I'm like, oh, there's a new Avenged Sevenfold album, and it's called The Stage. And I saw that it was an hour, 1 hour and 13. That's another thing. Hail to the King is their shortest album, almost on their shorter side with 53 minutes. And I think I've seen interviews M Shadows just saying that I think they just wanted to make like a a fun rock record at that moment.
That's what it seemed like.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts with on the stage? Because I know the stage was kind of like divisive too for some people.
This is true. Yeah, their stage was definitely a very kind of divided album for Avenged Sevenfold fans too, because everyone was, you have uh, your kind of hardcore fans that like the City of Evil type sound and just want the in your face Avenged Sevenfold, where there was elements we can kind of probably throw out. Hail to the King, as we talked about too, but Nightmare had some hardcore elements to it as well
Yeah.
too. But Stage is completely different too. This was a total progressive switch for them. So yeah, I think you definitely have divided camps on fans where really appreciate the evolution and the new sound, but some that are just like, no, I just want the City of Evil, Waking the Fallen, hardcore type stuff. So yeah, it was quite a switch there.
And I did, since you're a uber super fan of them, did M Shadows had the vocal like difficulties after that album, or was it between that album? You know that he had to have vocal surgeries.
I believe it was actually early on too. I think he was having problems, kind
Yeah,
of almost City of Evil times too. There's kind of over the years there was vocal issues. Just I think it was polyps on the throat just from the screaming over the years. So I think that did lead to some of the kind of the tweaking of the sound as well.
yeah, and I think he's better when he sings. But yeah, to me, the stage when
Yeah.
it came out, it was a very welcome surprise. I think the stage as an opener, it's an epic song. I just love it. There's
Oh yeah.
progressive elements, there's great guitar work, there's like some psychedelic elements to it. Plus I love the lyrics, like how it sings, like the lyrics are like the world is a stage and like we are the puppets. So it was very
Hmm.
deep lyrics after getting their last album, which wasn't deep at all. So it really, to me, it really brought them back. And I was very surprised with that album. But there's other great tracks. What other tracks really stand out to you when you listen to that album?
I mean, before you get off the stage itself too, I mean, that
Yeah,
song itself, it's an 8.5 minute song too, with a great
as an
video
opener.
too, if you've ever seen the music video for it
Oh,
too.
I saw with the puppets. It's a great music video.
Oh yeah, it's a great one too. I mean, there's a couple along the way that have different prog elements to it that I appreciate. I think kind of almost like an old school Avenged Sevenfold. I kind of appreciate was "Goddamn" was kind of a typical Avenged Sevenfold song. Sunny Disposition is one I like a lot as well too. Um, Probably one of the other ones too that is kind of like completely different for them too was Roman Sky, which I appreciate. There's just a lot of different, I think, elements to that album that
Yeah,
make it
and
quite
that was
unique from what they've done before.
like very beautiful and atmospheric track, like at times,
Yeah.
which was very different from them until that point. uh,
Well, yes, I know what you're foreshadowing. So yes, going down
but
that road.
yeah, I really enjoyed that album, and I think that I like it, that I think that it was a very deep album, also like lyrically. How like when they're talking about like a lot of like existential things about life, and how life
Hmm.
can be so dire, and how sometimes we're like a stage and we can't control ourselves, or the government is controlling ourselves. So it was very good. I think Paradigm, the second song, has a lot of like that. It mixes what they did with City of Evil with that White Album and Nightmare, like mixed together,
Mm,
and that's the sound of that
yeah.
song. So I really enjoyed that one. So they kept parts of or like, yeah, we're more progressive, but we still have some of the elements from our previous albums. So yeah, I think it shows. I know it got some divisive fans, and some people didn't like it, but I really enjoyed it. It was one of my
Oh yeah.
I think it was in my top five of that year of albums that I enjoyed. And the only thing, I think it was a mistake for them to just throw an album like surprise like that, because I think it got like their lowest sales, uh and they should have done like more marketing like for that one, because it really went under the radar a little bit for them.
To a degree, it definitely did.
Yeah, and it's a
I think
shame
one
because
other
it's
thing to point out.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. One thing I wanted to point out too is that as we were just talking about with "Hail to the King," where Aaron Elijah was the drummer, he only stayed on for about 2 years. I guess they had creative differences too. He was a lot younger than the rest of the band members. So the stage was the first album where Brooks Wackerman, who is the current drummer, of course, is on there too. Yes, from Bad Religion. So good tie in there. So yes, I think he
Oh
had a big
yeah,
influence too. And I mean, there's some exceptional drumming on that album.
he's a great fucking drummer. And I remember at the time there were Bad Religion fans that were pissed. I'm like, how dare you leave Bad Religion to go to Avenged Sevenfold? And I'm thinking, what? Bad Religion is a legendary band, but Avenged Sevenfold is on another, like right now, mainstream wise, it's a bigger band, more known by more people. So it would
This
make
is
sense. And I think his drumming really elevated that album. The drumming on the stage is amazing, and on their newest album too. So yeah, and I think he did some writing on it as well. So I think it was a great addition to the band to have him as
agreed.
the drummer. Uh,
And I
so
feel like, oh, sorry, one other point I wanted to make
no,
though
and it
too,
felt
as
like
we were just talking about, Bad Religion, other bands too. I feel like, there shouldn't be a knock on Avenged Sevenfold because I feel like they've always been great
yeah,
metal, punk historians too, and they always appreciate and kind of pay homage to some of the older bands that kind of paved the way too. So I think that's a great, for them to take Bad Religion's drummer and put them in. Should not be any kind of slight to Bad Religion, and he fits in great
no,
with them. And
no. That just tells you that they picked an amazing drummer that went from a
indeed.
punk band to a band that does other things, and uh, just filled in so nicely for the band. And after that, they had like some years where they released like I think an album that was like more demos, Diamonds in the Rough. But I think they spent a long time without releasing anything, because that's when M Shadows had like throat surgeries. And I believe that I read that they started recording Life is But a Dream like sometime in 2020 or 2021, but obviously the pandemic happened, and that's why it got pushed.
Hmm.
Uh,
They did a couple
so yeah,
songs too. There's a couple songs along the way too that they released for video games as well too. There's like a Call
yeah,
of Duty track that came out too that was, I mean, I appreciate it too because it had the signature Avenged Sevenfold sound, and there's hard hitting guitars, lyrics. It fit in nicely to their
yeah,
kind of
it
one
was more
offs,
of
and I
their like more simple songs to hear something filled in. So when
yeah.
it was 2023 and they announced Life is But a Dream, a lot of people were wondering what sound are they going by? And I was confused because I think nobody, I think it's still, I even said it in my album review. It's a strange single. Like I don't know why they went with that one as a single when you had songs like Game Over or Mattel. Uh,
Mm.
I'm like, why nobody? Because nobody, it's not about somebody has like that, dun, dun, like that riffing, except the part where Sinister Gates has that amazing
Yeah.
solo. So what do you think of Now that it's being, I think, when did Life is But a Dream came out? Like a few months ago?
It came out, I think it was, yeah, I think it was late May.
Yeah, it
I think it
came
was, yeah, I
out
think it came,
June, June 2, 2023.
okay.
So it's
So, yep.
been 3 months that we have been listening to the album. So uh what do you think? What was your initial reaction when you first listened to the album?
Well, you know what? It was interesting when I first heard because they released the Nobody single probably what 2 months or so before the album came out, so they kind of gave a little
Yeah.
bit of a teaser. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be the sound on this album. Like, I think we're taking kind of the stage maybe a little bit further with this progressive
Mhm.
rock sound to it. But once the full album released, I thought it was late May, but yeah, it was early June. I listened to it quite a few times all the way through and was just blown away. I mean, as when we hung out in Puerto Rico in June too, I think I was just
Yeah.
singing the praises of the album too. I mean, it goes in completely different directions. Each track takes you a different way. I mean, you've got tracks 8 through 10, which is G, ordinary, death. The God sequence there too. That is just
Yeah.
it's amazing. And yeah, I feel like they knocked it out of the park with this album too. I mean,
Yeah.
took progressive to a whole new level, completely different sound from what they've done, but
They
I feel like they nailed it.
they really went very Frank Zappa on this album,
Mm.
like all over the place. And some people are like, oh, it's not rocking. At first I thought I was gonna hate the album, but it's one of my favorite albums of the year. I think that a lot of people is like, oh, it has less guitars on it. And the parts where they have guitars, they're amazing. And
Yeah,
even the last track when they finish just with a piano, but it's like needed. It's a concept album, and not a lot of like.
agreed.
And I like how M Shadow said on an interview that this is an album that you either love or hate. I'm like, I haven't found that in between of someone that's like, oh, it's okay. I found people that say, like, even when I did the album review, there's comments like, oh, this is amazing, or this sucks. Those were the only two type of like songs. But like when you listen to the album, I think songs like Game Over, Mattel are amazing. Even
Mm.
We Love You. When I heard that track, I'm like, this is so over the place, but it has that like I thought of Mr. Bungle,
Yeah.
where it goes like all over the place, crazy, and so many different things that they tried on this track. Yeah, it's just an amazing record. And so we went through the evolution of their whole sound. So now what we're gonna do last is we're gonna say like how we thought they evolved, and if like they had some prog elements from the beginning. What do you think? What's your verdict?
What I was going to say too, I think it's just even what the band members have said themselves too, with M Shadows kind of pioneering that, saying that they always want to put out a different sound with each album because they don't want to just be the band that just same album year after year too, and you hear the same sound. They want to kind of constantly push themselves as musicians. And I mean,
Yeah,
I think as right now, this is being the peak since it's their latest album too. I mean, Life is But a Dream is just completely different from anything they've done and just have really kind of, I think, really upped the stakes from what they can do musically.
yeah, I believe so too. I think they're a band now that they can do whatever the fuck they want. They
Yeah, they've earned
uh
that right. Yeah.
if there's people who want to listen to their first like sound, I'm like, why? I don't think so. I'm like, this is much better, and they still do a combination of both. Like, uh, if I would have to rate, say my top five Avenged Sevenfold albums, I would put number one. Uh, I would say City of Evil. I would say number two, Waking the Fallen. Number three, Nightmare. Number four, Life is But a Dream, and five, The Stage. That would be my top five
Hmm.
from them. What would yours be?
I'd say I'm pretty close in a lot of ways too. I think I'd probably go definitely City of Evil number one, just a lot of classic tracks and a
Yeah,
great sound to it. I might put Nightmare a little bit higher. I might put them second. There's a lot of tracks on Nightmare I like a lot too. probably Wake in the Fall, and probably put that third. Maybe Life is But a Dream next, and then I'd probably round it out with the self-titled album too, just because again, that's when they started kind of experimenting, and I think there's a lot on there that works. There's a lot of
Yeah.
classic sounds, but a lot of different elements too. But again, it's still Avenged Sevenfold, and it's a unique and great sound.
Yeah. So there you have it, people. Those are thoughts and our discussion of the evolution of Avenged Sevenfold. Let me know, because this is the first time a video that I did it, that it wasn't like a normal ranking. If you like this, let us know if you would like us to do something like this with some different bands, because I think it's interesting. Instead of like a ranking, just going in just two dudes on couches talking
That's
about
right.
albums and the evolution of sound. So again, people, if you like the videos that I'm putting out, do not forget to subscribe, and do not forget to give me a like. That helps me with the YouTube algorithm to get to more people like yourself. So again, I want to thank my guest today, Mike G, for joining me and talking some Avenged Sevenfold with me. I hope, did you have fun, Mike?
Absolutely, Hector. I appreciate you having me too. I mean, it's always nice to kick back and chat with you, and talk about great band like Avenged Sevenfold. So all in
Yeah,
on it.
yeah. So people, until next time, this is Hector, the Shield Dude on a Couch, and I'll see you all right here on the couch. Thank you and good night.